During the First World War, soldiers in the trenches of France faced a weapon they could not see, could not outrun, and could not fight. It was a gas. It drifted across no man's land in thick yellow clouds. It burned the eyes, flooded the lungs, and killed silently. The men who survived it never forgot what it looked like. George Crile was a surgeon on the Western Front. He spent 2 years treating soldiers who had breathed that gas. He held them down while they drowned in their own lungs. When the war ended, Crile came home to Cleveland, Ohio, and built a hospital. For 8 years, it was one of the finest medical institutions in America. And then, on a Wednesday morning in 1929, thick yellow gas began pouring from the basement of that hospital into every room, every corridor, every stairwell. Crile arrived from a nearby building and stood on the lawn. He recognized it immediately. The gas had been hiding beneath the building for 8 years, and the man standing on that lawn was one of the few people alive who understood exactly what it could do. In 1917, Crile led a medical unit from Cleveland to the battlefields of France. Base Hospital No. 4 was the first American contingent sent to Europe after the United States entered the war. Over 20 months, his team handled more than 82,000 cases. Many were gas casualties, men whose lungs had been seared from the inside by chemicals designed to kill as slowly as possible. Crile watched them die by the hundreds. He documented their symptoms, he studied their autopsies, and he formed an idea. When the war ended, Crile returned to Cleveland with 3 fellow physicians who had served alongside him: Frank Bunce, William Lower, and John Phillips. All 4 had seen what happened when doctors worked alone, without access to specialists. On the front lines, they had learned the opposite. Their plan was to build a single institution where physicians from every specialty worked together under one roof. The Cleveland Clinic opened on February 28, 1921. Within a few years, it had become one of the most respected medical institutions in the country, pioneering treatments for diabetes and advancing cardiac surgery. By 1929, the clinic occupied a 4-story outpatient building on Euclid Avenue, a white brick structure with an open atrium at its center, topped by a glass skylight. The waiting room had wicker chairs and potted ferns. On a busy day, roughly 250 people moved through the building. None of them knew what was beneath their feet. In the basement, in a room that had originally been built to store coal, sat several tons of nitrocellulose X-ray film packed into more than 4,000 envelopes. Every hospital in America used nitrocellulose for X-rays. It was cheap and produced sharp images. It was also, chemically, nearly identical to the compounds used to manufacture explosives. When it decomposed, it released gases including carbon monoxide, nitrogen dioxide, and phosgene, the same gases that had been used as weapons on the Western Front. Fresh film was dangerous enough, but aged film, stored in a dark, unventilated space with steam pipes running through the ceiling, was worse. It broke down on its own. The fire protection industry had known about this since 1923. Storage guidelines calling for sprinklers, ventilation, and fireproof vaults had been published by 1925. But the knowledge never reached most hospitals. Ohio's building codes required nothing of the kind. On the morning of Wednesday, May 15, 1929, a steamfitter named Buffery Boggs went to the basement to repair a leaking steam pipe. The pipe ran through the film room, 7.5 inches from the nearest shelf of X-ray film. Boggs stripped insulation from the pipe near the leak, exposing the hot metal, then left to have the steam shut off. He went back to his shop to wait. For 2 hours, nothing appeared to happen. Inside that sealed room, the film was cooking. Heat from the exposed pipe was accelerating a reaction that had probably been building for years. At around 11, Boggs returned. He found a cloud of yellowish smoke in the corner of the room. He emptied a fire extinguisher into it. No effect. Nitrocellulose produces its own oxygen as it burns. You cannot put it out with water. You cannot smother it. A small explosion threw him through the doorway. He crawled out through a basement window with the help of a maintenance worker. What happened next turned a basement fire into a mass casualty event. The film room had a steel fire door with a thermostat designed to seal the room automatically if the temperature rose. But a plumber had previously installed a water pipe that blocked the closing mechanism. No one was down there to close it by hand, so it stayed open. Directly outside that open door, a ventilating fan was running. It pushed the fumes into a pipe tunnel that connected to 19 vertical chases running from the basement to the roof. Every chase passed through every floor, connecting to every room in the building. The National Fire Protection Association would later write that the most diabolical cunning could scarcely have devised an arrangement more surely calculated to spread death throughout the building. On the third floor, someone had propped open a stair door with a foot latch. The fumes poured through it and concentrated in the corridors. Within minutes, the third floor became the deadliest zone in the building. When the gas reached the telephone switchboard, an operator named Gladys Gibson began plugging cord after cord into every socket on her board. She set every telephone in the building ringing. Doctors heard it in their offices. Patients heard it in examination rooms. For many of them, it was the last warning they would ever receive. A window sat open 3 feet from Gibson's chair. She never moved toward it. When rescuers found her, every cord was still plugged in. She was not the only person who chose to stay. William Brownlow ran the clinic's art and photography department. He had taken the day off. He came back that morning to pick up something he had forgotten. When the explosion hit, he went up, not down. He climbed to the third floor, smashed a window, and began pulling people toward a rescue ladder outside. He breathed the fumes until he could no longer stand. That evening, Brownlow died. He did not have to be there. At 11:30, a massive explosion rocked the building. A clock on the third floor balcony stopped at exactly that time. Seconds later, a second blast shattered the skylight. The force sent vapor through every remaining corridor, but it also tore open the roof. The gas vented upward through the broken glass, and for the first time, rescuers outside could see people at the windows on every floor. Some were waving, some were motionless. Bodies lay on the front lawn. Porch furniture from neighboring houses was pressed into service as stretchers. A police officer 2 blocks away was blinded by the fumes. Firefighters arrived with hoses. Spraying water on burning nitrocellulose only made it worse. 30-year-old police officer Ernest Staub went in anyway. Again and again, he dragged people from the building. He pulled out 21 before he collapsed. Newspapers the next morning published his obituary, but Ernest Staub was not dead. Not yet. Dr. John Phillips, one of the 4 founders, was on the third floor when the gas hit. He jumped from a window into a fireman's net, then climbed to the roof of the hospital next door and began directing first aid. He was coughing but functional, giving orders. To everyone around him, he appeared to be one of the lucky ones. He was not. The nitrogen oxides in the vapor had dissolved in the moisture of his lungs and formed acid. The damage was invisible at first. Hours later, fluid began filling the tissue. This was the same delayed reaction Crile had seen on the Western Front. Men who walked away from a gas attack apparently unharmed would collapse the next day. A man named Ben Jones was treated at the scene and considered only slightly affected. He drove 150 miles home to Pennsylvania. He collapsed the following day and died. 2 of the clinic's own doctors, Perry McCullough and Conrad Gilkison, were discharged after a few days under oxygen, then readmitted 10 days later as fluid filled their lungs again. They spent 6 weeks watching their fingernails turn blue in the small hours of the morning. In the worst of it, Gilkison turned to McCullough and said, "If you are here in the morning and I am not, get old Bennett to take me to the ball game." Bennett was the undertaker on the corner. Both men survived. John Phillips did not. By late afternoon, Phillips was exhausted and turning blue. He returned to his apartment. Crile and Lower came to his bedside. They tried transfusion. They tried oxygen. Nothing worked. Shortly after 9 that evening, Phillips recognized what was happening to him. He asked his physicians to leave the room and comfort his wife. Then the only founder of the Cleveland Clinic, who was not a surgeon, the quiet internist from Ontario, who had built the largest consultant practice in North America, died alone. He was 50 years old. George Crile wrote 6 words about what happened that day. "I saw nothing in France so terrible." To his wife Grace, he said something else. Grief would be defeat. 2 days later, Crile was back in the operating room. The investigation identified 3 possible causes: heat from the steam pipe, an exposed light bulb too close to the film, or a discarded cigarette. All 3 were credible. None could be proven. The clinic was absolved of fault. 123 people were dead. 80 were patients or visitors. 43 were staff. The last victim died 5 months later. But the Cleveland Clinic did not die with them. Equipment was carried across Euclid Avenue to a donated building. 5 days after the disaster, the clinic reopened. More than 300 patients registered immediately. Donations arrived from across the country and from as far as India, China, and Australia. The clinic returned every dollar with interest and financed its own recovery. Crile and Lower pledged their personal life insurance to guarantee the building loan. The staff took pay cuts through the Great Depression. Every debt was repaid by 1941. The disaster forced changes that reached far beyond Cleveland. Fire departments received gas masks. National standards for hazardous material storage were rewritten, and the disaster ended nitrocellulose X-ray film. Kodak stopped manufacturing it by 1933. No film fire of consequence has ever occurred where proper safeguards were in place. The Cleveland Clinic had every failure at once. After 1929, that combination would never exist again. Ernest Staub, the officer who carried 21 people from the building, did return to duty. Weeks later, he collapsed on his lawn and was rushed back under an oxygen tent. A headline from 1931 read, "Creeping death still pursues policeman hero of Great Cleveland Clinic disaster." Staub did not die. He remained on the force for another 25 years, serving as a detective. The gas never fully left his lungs. The original building still stands on the Cleveland Clinic campus. It is designated Building T. A small memorial sits in its lobby. The campus has grown immensely around it. The Cleveland Clinic is now one of the largest and highest-rated hospital systems in the world. It operates across multiple states and several countries. The founding mission has not changed. The founding credo has not changed either: to act as a unit. On May 15, 1929, inside a building filling with poison gas, that is exactly what they did. What does it take to keep going after something like that? Crile lost a partner and 123 people in a single afternoon. He was operating again in 2 days. The clinic was open in 5. Let me know in the comments what you think about this story.